Okay, so Hestia snuck up on me, y'all. I went in thinking that I was researching the Greek goddess of home, hearth, and domestic life, and I ended up walking out of my research falling in love with the embodiment of I could, I just don't want to. The embodiment of power that doesn't need to prove itself. Because Hestia isn't the goddess that is out there conquering kingdoms, seducing gods, starting wars, or descending into the underworld. She's just kind of there. In fact, she doesn't really have much of her own mythology. She's just kind of at the center of everything, you know? And I think that that's actually kind of the point. I have been in a massive period of transformation lately. I've spent years doing shadow work, going through dark nights of the soul, shedding identities, learning discernment, learning to trust my own intuition. And I feel like I have finally reached a point in my life where I'm actually the most wise and confident that I've ever been. And at the same time, I kind of feel like a newborn baby in my own life. Like everything has cleared out. I am starting from scratch. But one of the biggest things that I am feeling right now specifically is this really intense pull inward. Literally the necessity of pulling my energy and harvesting it for myself exclusively. Like I don't have energy for nobody else but myself. Sometimes my girlfriend, if she's lucky, bless her sweet little soul. I am fully in my own world right now. I am learning how to conserve my precious energy. And most importantly, I've been thinking about my foundation, the foundation of myself, the foundation of my life. Home and family have been two of the most challenging areas of my life for the entire course of my life, okay? And this is evident in my astrological chart as well. The concept of home has always been something that's really, really heavy on my heart, especially right now. And then I was researching who my next goddess should be and came upon Hestia, the Greek goddess of the hearth, the home. If you don't know what a hearth is, look it up, but I'm going to put a picture here. It's like a fireplace, basically, but it goes a lot deeper. We'll get into it. So she's the Greek goddess of the hearth, the home, the sacred fire. Her name literally means hearth. Hestia literally means hearth or fireplace. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. It's interesting that I would feel called to the goddess of home and hearth. Because what does she have to say to someone who doesn't really have a home of her own right now? And then I started researching her. And I realized that that's exactly why I needed to meet her. Because I don't think Hestia really is the goddess of the home necessarily. She's the goddess of the center. And to me, those are two completely different things. A house, a home, is nothing but a structure. But the hearth is what makes that structure feel alive. It's the warmth, it's the nourishment, it's the place where people gather to worship, to laugh, to celebrate, to talk. In Greek culture, to sacrifice as well. It was the altar. To the gods, the hearth that Hestia tended to and protected was a permanent sacred fire that symbolized the eternal presence of the gods and their purity. Ironic, because a lot of them are a hot fucking mess. And like I said in ancient Greek life, the hearth wasn't just a cute little fireplace where they gathered and worshipped. It was incredibly sacred. Without a hearth, and therefore Hestia, who ruled the hearth, there was no family, there was no home, there was no civilization. And I know that sounds dramatic, but that is how seriously they took this shit. Hestia was present in the hearth of the home. But there were also public hearths that served as communal centers of worship. So her presence extended, say that 10 times fast. So her presence extended far past just individual families. She was connected to the continuity of the household, the community itself. One of the most beloved and worshipped Greek goddesses of her time. It was Zeus and it was her when it came to gods and goddesses that were heavily worshipped in the home at that time. And I think that that's why I'm so fascinated by her. Because Hestia isn't the goddess who goes out into the world and changes everything with her force and ferocity. In fact, in most stories, she's associated with being kind of quiet and passive. But she's the goddess who makes sure that they have a home to come back to. And that's a very different kind of power. So let's talk the tea about her actual mythology. Let's get a little nerdy with it so you can really get the picture. I should say, like I already mentioned, there is a severe lack of very detailed mythology that is about her. A lot of the stuff that I have read is really just like modern day headcanon. so to speak, just years and years and years of different interpretations and the ways that her followers, so to speak, the people that actually worship her, the way that they kind of resonate with her energy, the way that it feels to them, and also just people that have explored mythology, what their takes on it are. But Hestia is the firstborn child of Kronos. All right, Kronos is the youngest of the primordial titans. He's one of the OGs. He was the king of the universe during the Golden Age, and also the father to the very first Olympian gods. So yes, Hestia was one of the first Olympian gods to be born. Rhea, his wife and her mother, she was a titaness, the goddess of female fertility, motherhood, and comfort. Which is funny because she didn't ever really get the chance to really be a mom until way, way, way later on. And I'll explain why. Because Kronos is kind of an asshole. He had received a prophecy at some point, I guess, that one of his children was going to overthrow him. So what did he do? What was the rational thing to do in his man brain? He swallowed his children. Yeah. As soon as the babies would be born, he would swallow them whole, literally eat them. And Hestia, being the firstborn, was also the first that he swallowed. Now her siblings, some names that you might recognize in Greek mythology, are Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and Demeter. And they soon followed suit. Or should I say soon swallowed suit. But here's the thing, Rhea, their mother, was not fucking with this. She was getting real sick of this shit. So when she had Zeus, she hid him away. She hid him away from Kronos and she tricked his ass and gave him a rock wrapped in a baby blanket instead. As for Zeus, hid him away in a cave somewhere in Crete until he was old enough, after he done growed up in private, to return and confront Cronus. Now he was said to be helped by either Metis or Gaia, but he ended up feeding Cronus this like magical potion that made this man vomit the kids back up, turned this man bulimic. Now all the kids were fully grown beings by this point. That's how long they'd been in there. And they were barfed up in reverse order. So Hestia was actually the last one to come out. So she's the firstborn and the last to be released. So she's simultaneously the beginning and the end. As a fellow older sister, I would never let my siblings live that down. But to be honest, I really think that that's a super interesting place for a goddess to exist. Because I did start to think of Hestia through the lens of our modern archetype of an older daughter. And obviously, the idea that she's this older daughter that holds the family together is more of like a modern interpretation than true written ancient myth. But as an archetype, I mean, I get it. Because the oldest daughter often does become the emotional hearth of the family. She's the one who knows what's going on with everyone. She knows who's upset. She knows who needs what. She's the peacekeeper, the translator. She's the one that is constantly reading the emotional temperature of the room. Speaking from experience, because like I said, I am the oldest and only daughter in my family. I have spent a huge portion of my life being the emotional hearth for people who were not always protecting my fire. And I think embodying and understanding Hestia has made me come to this realization of something. Maybe being the hearth, being the center, doesn't mean being responsible for holding everyone together. Maybe you can be the center without being responsible for anybody else's behavior. Maybe you can love people without being responsible for their peace. And that has been a huge lesson for me lately, because I have recently completely withdrawn from my parents and their bullshit. The whole dysfunctional parent thing, I get you, Hestia. I do not say that lightly. But I have learned that loving someone doesn't automatically mean that they get access to my life, my fire. And I think Hestia has something really important to say about that. Now, it might just be the projection of my own life lessons and the way that I've interpreted her stories, but I digress. This is my fucking channel, and I get to say what I want to say. Because here's another thing that I find really interesting about her. You know how I said she doesn't have any mythology, really? Even in the stories that she does have, she's quiet. She's not super involved. There's no dramatic, crazy stories. You have your little lore here and there, but her role in it was rarely violent. So I was like, where are all her stories? You know, where's the drama? Where are the epic quests, the lovers, the betrayal, the revenge that we come to love and associate with Greek mythology, especially for one of the most worshipped deities next to Zeus? But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, that's actually kind of the point. Because if you think about it, mythology is always telling a story of disruption in one way or another. Someone leaving home, someone falling in love and getting into a battle about it, someone going to war, someone getting kidnapped, someone seeking revenge or descending into the underworld. Something is always happening in mythology, and it is very rarely peaceful. And Hestia? She's the quiet center holding that hearth down, the place that people return to after all of the chaos happens. To me, that's why she doesn't need 1,000 dramatic stories. Most of the time, she bows out of them intentionally. She says, that's y'all shit. That's not my shit. I'm tending to my fire over here, and I have to tend to my fire because it's connected to y'all's sacred fucking power. So her mythology is basically, I'm here, and the fire is still burning. And there is so much power in that, if you think about it. Because we're taught to think that if you're powerful, you have to be loud, you have to be visible, and Hestia's energy is almost the opposite. Your energy doesn't have to be everywhere for you to be powerful. You can sit at the center of your own world. You do not have to respond to every conflict. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone, fight in every battle, prove that you can win, prove that you are powerful. You can simply decide, is this actually worth my fire? That sacred fire that she tends to and embodies, sometimes literally transforming into the hearth. There are some stories where she never actually exists really as a human form as often as she does a flame. That fire is energy. Symbolically, fire is associated often with life force, passion, creativity. In the tarot, the wands, they are a very fiery energy. They are always representing this life force, this passion. And you only have so much of that. Yes, we are infinite, but not to be wasted. We are infinite, asterisk, not to be wasted though. So in her passivity, I don't think that Hestia is telling us not to fight. She's teaching us to ask, is this worth my fire? Is this worthy of my attention? Is this worthy of me stepping out of my center and getting involved in this? Especially in the case of Hestia. If she's going to step away from her sacred duty of protecting that fire, it better be for a good reason, because time away from tending to the flame doesn't only impact her, it impacts everybody. Sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do is not participate. Not because you're afraid, not because you can't, but because you know that your energy is what? Precious. Which brings me to something else that I find really interesting about Hestia. There's a lot of modern conversation that she's this energy, this quietly terrifying woman who is actually capable of throwing the fuck down, but just chooses not to. That's not necessarily something that's proved with ancient sources, so I'm not going to say that that is established mythology, but I do love that archetype underneath it. Because yeah, fire can warm and nourish and illuminate. It can also burn, but Hestia's fire is contained. And I think there's something really beautiful about that, especially when you've done a lot of shadow work, because we learn when we dive deep within ourselves that there's a difference between repression and containment. Repression says, I can't let this part of me exist. Containment is, this exists, I know that this exists, and I decide what happens with it. Like, I know what I'm capable of when I'm angry. This tongue, honey, sharp. I know what I'm capable of when I am hurt. I know what my shadow looks like. We're like this, me and that shadow. But I don't need to be afraid of those parts of myself. I don't have to pretend like they're not there. I just get to decide what to do with them. And that is a really mature form of power. You can be angry without becoming the anger. You can be fierce without living in battle. You can know your capacity for destruction without having to prove it. You can have a warrior inside of you all the time without feeling the need to go to war. There's also this like modern interpretation of Hestia that I love, that she's like this safe space for the more chaotic gods that are often tossed aside in Greek society. There are a lot of stories speculating this, like the god Ares, the god of war. It's said that she's his favorite aunt. Because she lets him go and do his chaotic shit, go to battle, do whatever the fuck he's gonna do as the god of war. And then when he's done, she lets him come home, she cleans him up from battle, she feeds him a nice little meal, treats him with kindness. Same with Eris, the goddess of strife, discord, and rivalry. Often avoided, except by Hestia, who allows Eris to come gossip with her about what's going on with Aphrodite and Demeter. Or stories of no one wanting to play chess with Athena because she always wins. But Hestia will. Or she's one of the few gods that didn't have issues with Aphrodite. Aphrodite was kind of messy. Not just because Zeus made it so that Aphro's magic, like love magic, didn't work on Hestia, but also because Hestia had the ability to stay really contained. She never really let her passions and her anger get the best of her. She was not easily triggered, basically. So being around Aphrodite wasn't as difficult for her as other people. Now again, none of that is confirmed ancient mythology. None of that is confirmed with ancient sources. But there is a lot of modern conversation. Modern meaning not necessarily today, but over the last few hundred years, you know? I feel like you really start to feel more of the essence and energy of how that goddess's archetype has developed over time, what the people that have felt into her have, created her out to be. I feel like that's often a more accurate representation of what the being is, what the embodiment is, what the message is behind the ancient text. But I do so love that imagery. I do so love thinking of her as like this cool ass aunt that just lets you come home and do your thing and be chaotic. And she just, is able to, again, witness and observe your chaos, be there for you, know that things are going on, and also stay in her center. Stay over here, not make your chaos her chaos. And that's why she was loved by these gods that were typically, again, thrown out because of their chaotic nature, because of the shit that they were constantly getting into. They were tossed aside often. And then you have this archetype of Hestia who's like, come on, baby. It's okay. She doesn't say, why are you so angry? Why are you so intense? She says, go fight your battles. Go be intense. Go be angry. Go be exactly who you are. And when you're done, come home, I got a nice meal for you. And I think that that's a really beautiful kind of compassion. Just letting people do their thing and creating whatever space for them that you can, while also not ever stepping out of your center, she's never going to their battles to clean them up. They choose to come to her in her space, within her boundaries. Because she can hold space for the warrior without becoming the warrior. She can understand someone's intensity without letting it consume her. A lesson that I have learned the very, very hard way myself. But I can understand why someone behaves the way that they do, and they still can't treat me like shit. Sometimes it's embarrassing how much shit that I allowed myself to take just out of what I thought to be compassion. No. I can have compassion for trauma, and I still get to decide whether I want that shit in my life. I can simply say, go fight your battles, and when you're done, if you want to come home, this is where the hearth is. But I'm not going to give you the matches. You know what I mean? I think that's a very Hestian boundary. Another, goofy modern interpretation of Hestia's energy is the person always had the tea on everybody because everybody would just come and sit around her hearth and share their stories. She always was in the know. She always had the tea on shit, but without ever needing to insert herself into it, which I love. I am guilty of loving some gossip if it ain't got shit to do with me, I've spent a lot of my life thinking being informed meant that I need to fix it. Like if I know that it's happening, then I need to respond. If someone is upset, I need to come to their aid. And then you have Hestia's energy, which is you can know without having to insert yourself into it. You can sit at the center of your own world and let the information come to you. You don't have to react to everything. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. My opinionated ass is still learning that one. And then you can decide, does this belong at my hearth? Becoming more selective of what gets your energy. And that feels like true sovereignty. That feels like true sovereignty. Did you hear that deep breath, that deep exhale? It just feels good. Just feels good to think about that, right? Being so selective with your energy, which brings me to Hestia, because she is this embodiment of sovereignty for other reasons as well. She's one of the virgin or maiden goddesses in Greek mythology, but it's important to understand that when we talk about virgin in this context, we're not talking about the stupid modern ideas about sexual purity. We are talking about the ancient interpretation of the unclaimed woman. And she doesn't become someone's wife. She doesn't transfer her sacred energy, her sacred hearth to nobody else. She doesn't have to be claimed. She belongs to herself. And there's speculation that she made Zeus do that. Others say that Zeus gifted her with that. But regardless, she chose to make it that way. She chose that intentionally. And I love that. What a powerful form of sovereignty. She's not saying I don't need anyone. She's saying my center does not belong to anyone else. Excuse. That is a huge distinction. Because you can love someone. You can have a partner, you can have a family, you can have a community, and still have an inner hearth that is exclusively yours. I want to build my life around my calling, my creativity, my vision, my spiritual life, my own inner authority. To me, that's my hearth. That's my sacred fire. And that doesn't mean that I don't love people. It means that I finally understand that I can't make everyone else my center and then wonder why I feel like I'm disappearing. Like this, there are some stories that while Hestia and her siblings were in Kronos' stomach, right? That she protected her siblings from his stomach acid for as long as she could, so much so that by the time that they were regurgitated, she could barely maintain a form at all. For a long time, she was barely a light flicker of existence. She had to stay by her sacred hearth in order to regain her strength. It makes sense to me why she was known to just stay in her world over here by her hearth. Bitch, I would too after that shit. Stomach acid? Y'all better worship me. And worship her they did. She played a huge role in ancient sacrifices and worship. She was often honored at the beginning of every sacrifice. In most traditions, she received a portion of the sacrifice before any of the other gods. And I love this idea because, yeah, the hearth gets fed first. And that's another fantastic lesson that Hestia has for me right now. Thank you. The hearth gets fed first. Your energy gets fed first. Your creativity gets fed first. Your spiritual practice, gets fed first. Not because nobody else matters, but because you cannot be the center of anything if your fire is out. Because I don't think pulling inward is selfish. I don't think that this call to go inwards right now in my life is selfish. I think that I am pulling inward because I am finally learning to replenish the source of my own fire. I bet my inner fire is like, thank God, bitch, we struggling down here. I've spent so much of my life giving energy away to people, to relationships, to family, to survival. Oh my God, to trying to understand everybody, everything, try to fix it all. And now, understandably so, I'm like, actually, reverse on that. Reverse on all of that. Let me go ahead and suck all of that right back here. Back to myself, back to my creativity, back to my calling. And I think that's why Hestia is asking, what happens when you stop becoming the hearth for everyone else and finally become the keeper of your own fire? And this brings me to probably one of the more personal aspects of my current relationship with Hestia and what I've learned. Like I said before, I do not have a permanent home of my own. I'm living in a space that is not mine. I am a guest. I was literally homeless at several points in my journey, living in the car. I'm in this really weird liminal period where I'm building an entirely new life, and the physical home that matches that has not yet arrived. And I kept thinking, okay, I think my life has shown me, especially reading through Hestia, that the physical home will come, but the hearth has to come first. Right now, I get to decide and explore what that future home looks like, visualize it, build it. What does it feel like? Who gets access? What do I nourish? What do I protect? What do I refuse to let in? I have this vision of the spiritual altar that I want to finally create in my own space. I know what it will look like. I know what it'll feel like. And while I don't have an exact specific version of it yet, I'm not in my own home, like I said. The home I am in is very, very wary of alternative spiritual practices, so to speak. It's incredibly Christian, so I have to be very careful. I have to tread lightly. I can't really make the full extent of my worship known, so I don't have the full altar I would choose if it were my own space. But that doesn't mean that I wait to tend to the sacred center of my life. The altar that I have now doesn't have to be perfect to be sacred. It doesn't have to be the altar I would choose in my dream home to be something that is meaningful and powerful, because the magic isn't in the room. It isn't in the setup itself. It's in the relationship that I create with the flame. And that is what Hestia is teaching me. I can create a portable hearth. I am my own center. Home is where the heart is, right? I can carry my center with me no matter where I go. Whatever season of life I am moving through, the flame moves with me. And honestly, my creative practice has become my altar as well. Every time I sit down to create and study and learn, I am tending to the flame. Every time I protect my creative energy, I'm tending to the flame. Every time I refuse to let someone else's chaos consume me, I am what? Tending to the flame. That's why I think Hestia ended up feeling so relevant to me right now, because I spent a lot of my life learning how to survive the fire. I've learned how to walk through it. I've learned how to burn things down. I've learned how to let parts of myself die in the process. And now I think I'm learning how to tend to that fire, how to just stay in my peace and allow it to burn. I came in thinking I was just learning about the goddess of hearth and home. And she came in like, no, honey, I'm teaching you how to come home to yourself. So ask yourself, dude, ask yourself, what parts of you have you neglected because you were too busy tending to everyone else's fire? What dream, calling, life force, what part of your soul has been waiting for you to finally turn around and feed it? Because that is for sure where I'm at, friends. My energy is coming home to me. Hestia is reminding me the house will come, the empire will come, the life I am building will come, but the hearth is already lit. Just focus on tending to that. I love you, and I love you.